Hi everyone, thanks for stopping by today at my channel. I am actually participating in a challenge with the Facebook group called Craft IQ. And for the month of May, what they've done is they have posted a challenge where we are going to build a layout by only knowing a few things at a time. So the first layer of what I know is that I need to use a solid color base piece of paper. I have to have at least a minimum of 2 pattern papers on my page. I need to create a large vertical and I need to use some mixed media. So to get started on my layout here, I am using some texture paste opaque matte. That's going to be my mixed media. And I have a piece of toffee cardstock from Close to My Heart. Those are my pattern papers I'm using. And then I'm going to come in with my stencil here from Close to My Heart. And I think I'm going to use the chevron pattern. And I'm going to put it on with my texture paste. And I'm going to have a little bit peeking up in the top right corner and a little bit in the bottom left corner. And then my idea is that I'm going to put those pattern papers over the top of those texture paste sections, and that way it just looks like they're kind of peeking out from underneath my papers. Really, those are the only things that I know so far in terms of building this layout, because that's the challenge, right? And so every couple of days, every day actually, the ladies who are in charge of this challenge, they tell us a few new things that we need to add to our layout. And so you never really know what direction it's going to go in. And I did try to work on this as many days as I could, but there were, after this first day, I had to add up a couple of layers because I couldn't work on it for a few days, but that's okay. So I do my best to stay true to the challenge. So here I'm just taking that texture paste and I'm smearing it on over that chevron stencil, and then I'm just going to flip it around and come in the other direction in that bottom left corner. And then, like I said, what I'm thinking right now, based on what I know, is that I'm going to take those pattern papers and I'm going to cut them so that they are in a large vertical coming down right between those two texture paste sections, and then that texture paste will just be poking out from underneath. And so there, I've got my mixed media, I've got my solid cardstock in that toffee color. I have at least 2 contrasting pattern papers that I'm going to put right here in that large vertical. And that's layer 1 fixed. All right, so now layers 2, 3, and 4, because like I said, I didn't have time to do each of them on their own days, so I just kind of added them together. Now layer 2, I have to represent music. Layer 3 is add stars. And part 4, one of the things I need to do is a multi-font title, 3 of something, and a punch. And then part 5 is what I'm working on right here. So I just took a product that I've had in my stash for over 5 years. It had to be at least 5 years in your stash. And I just kind of sprayed that and used a little bit of drops from it, and I let that dry. So I did that part off camera. Now I have got my papers. I'm ready to go ahead and commit to cutting them to a certain size, because I waited before I pulled them, but I waited because I wasn't really sure what direction it was going in. So I'm just going to cut these into a couple of different strips. Now the papers that I'm using, those 2 that are on the left are current from Close to My Heart in the May and June catalog. That black and white one is part of the Mix In paper collection. And that red and white gingham, it's actually a paprika color, that is from the Hillside Cottage collection that is current right now in the May and June catalog. And then the other black and white piece that's over there on the right is something that's from Christmas time. The other side actually has Christmas trees on it. So it's just a piece of scrap from my stash. And then I am going to tear an edge on all of them just to add a little bit of extra texture and dimension to my layout. And then I'm just going to layer them so that each of those torn edges will show. So far, I think I'm doing okay following along with the different rules and parameters in this challenge. Like I said, originally I had hoped to be able to work on my layout every single day, as I knew one more piece of what I needed to do, but life got in the way, and so I did have to add those 4 layers all at once. Just because I wasn't able to come up to my craft room and work on it. But that's okay. I was kind of making some mental decisions as I saw each day when they would post, do this, add this, here's the next part. And I would kind of think to myself, all right, I'm going to use this or do that. And so even though I wasn't actually physically working on my layout each individual day, I was making some mental decisions just to try to hold myself to the true challenge of building a layout one day at a time when you don't know what the rules are going to be. It really was a lot of fun. So now I'm just going to take each of those strips of paper and I'm just going to use them to create that large vertical, which was part of layer number 1. And I'm just going to kind of line them up and stack them on top of each other so that you can see a little bit of each pattern as well as that torn edge. And I think that turns out pretty well. And I picked these particular papers because, especially with that paprika color, it really matches some of the colors that are going on in my photos that I'm using. So I've got some pictures of my son and daughter and my niece when we were at my parents' house a couple of years ago. And my parents have a lot of oranges and those kinds of colors that are in the tile and the rug and just that sort of thing going on in their house. And so I thought that paprika color especially really worked well with what my pictures had going on in them. And it was kind of neutral enough too that, this is actually a page for my son's layout. I didn't want to do anything too girly or flowery or pink, and so I thought that paprika color was perfect for this. And then of course the blacks and also that toffee color just kind of also match some of those colors in the picture. All right, so I'm going to have my pictures going in that large vertical like that. And then one of the other things that I had to do, and this is part of part 4, is I had to use a punch. Now, honestly, I don't really have very many punches left in my stash. I usually use my die cut machine, my little Cuttlebug, or I use my Cricut, and I've really given a lot of my punches away to my daughters to play with, but I do still have this circle punch. I'm not even sure. It's probably a 1-inch would be my guess. And so that is the only punch I had left to work with. And so I pulled it out and then I punched my leftover paper, that one that was the Christmas piece actually, and I made these circles. And then I'm just going to kind of fuss with them for a while and place them in different spots around the page until I know where I want them to go. And so ultimately I'm going to have a couple up there in the top left corner, and then I'm going to put a few down in the bottom right corner, and I'm going to have them all kind of hanging off the side of the page, and then I'll just trim that excess off. And so that worked out pretty well, I think. Now, another thing I need to do, and this was part of also part 4, was to have a title that included multiple fonts, and it had to have at least 2 fonts. So I cut this word family out of black cardstock and on my Cricut, and I used it from, I want to say it's the Close to My Heart art booking collection is where I got that word family from. And then that's going to be one of my fonts. And then the other thing I'm going to do is use a stamp set to stamp We Are. And so that's how my title is actually going to take care of not only the multi-font title layer, but also the fact that I have to represent music in some way. So for part 2, that was the representing music. You could do that in any way. So you could actually have a picture that had something to do with music. You could have some paper that had anything to do with music. You could use a title that was a song title. So any way, shape, or form, as long as you were representing music somehow, that was going to take care of the part 2 layer. So I'm going to stamp We Are, and then I've got my family. So check there. I've got my circles that are coming out of a punch, so check there on that. And then another thing that was part of part 4 is that I had to use 3 of something. So I take care of this a couple of different ways. I've got 3 circles up there in the top left. I've got 3 photos. I definitely have at least 3 of a lot of things. I've got 3 different pattern papers. So I've got 3 taken care of, checked off my list a few different ways there. So I'm just going to trim the excess off those circle punches that I've got hanging off the edge there. And I think that worked out perfectly. Now, part 3 is to add stars. What to do with my stars? I do have these star sequins that are from the current May and June catalog for Close to My Heart, and they're part of the Stars and Sparklers collection. You can see they look a little patriotic, but I thought that gold worked well with my toffee paper and the colors in my pictures. And so I kind of play around a little bit with putting them in the middle of those circles, and then I think ultimately I decide that I don't like that, and I pull those off and I move them to a different place. But that was how I was trying to use my stars originally. I think here's where I decide, no, I don't really like that. I'm going to pull that off. And luckily they weren't too terribly stuck to my paper. I just had to use my rub and remove eraser to get a little bit of adhesive off, but I was able to remove those and kind of play with them in a different way. So I'm trying to figure out the star element here. I really wish you can kind of see that package, or you could earlier. I have a wooden star, which is a collection of embellishments from Close to My Heart, and I love, love, love it. But I only had one star left, and I thought it would look a little silly just to have the one wooden star, and so I need to order some more. So the stars are something that are kind of a work in progress. So while I'm thinking about that, I'm going to go ahead and put my photos down, and because I know that they're going to go there. So anything that I can get done and kind of, like I said, check off my list, I am going for it. And so I'm just going to stack those 3 photos, 3 of something, while I'm kind of contemplating what to do with my stars. I do ultimately decide to use those star sequins, and that works out because later you're going to see that part 6, the layer 6, has to have sequins. And so it's actually going to kind of be a 2-for-1 when I do use those. So here we go. Yep, I need to have sequins and I need to have splatters. And then part 7 is that I need to have stitching of some kind. So now I'm back here working on this on another day. And I am going to stamp my stitching around the page, and here I am. Yep, see, I'm back to those stars, guys. I've decided this is the way to go. I'm going to definitely put those stars on here, just not in the middle of those circles, and maybe even a couple of other gold sequins, although really the stars will kind of take care of it by themselves. And then I'm still going to have to put my title down there. I've got my journaling spot ready to go, and then otherwise I'm just really kind of to the final touches here. I have to do the stitching, and what I'm showing you here is that I think I'm going to come around the edge of my paper, but I'm going to stamp my stitching. I thought about hand stitching it, and then I thought about how long that would take, and so I decided to kind of take the easy way out and just stamp it. I have a bunch of different stamp sets from Close to My Heart that have some little dashed stitch lines on them, and so I just grabbed one, put it on my black, and I'm just going to go around the edge with some black ink. The only part that I am a little bit worried about, because again, I didn't know this at the beginning of creating this layout, is that I do have that texture paste in the bottom left corner, and it goes right up to the edge of the page. And I've never stamped over texture paste, and I'm a little worried about how that's going to turn out. So you can see I started at the opposite side of my page, and I'm going to save it for last, just keeping my fingers crossed that it works out okay. Had I known that I was going to be putting some stitch stamps all the way around the edge of my paper at the beginning, I would have kept that texture paste away from the edge so that I wouldn't have to worry about it. But that's the challenge, right? We are building a layout as part of this May challenge, and you don't know until each day goes by what the different layers are going to be. And so here we go. Fingers crossed, guys. Fingers crossed it ends up working out okay. Spoiler alert. I was so nervous. Yay, it worked. And so it was okay. I probably wouldn't want to stamp over texture paste normally, but in a pinch for my build a layout, it worked out just fine. Phew, got that part done. Okay, so I still need to do my stars and my sequins. So we're back to that. Like I said, I know at this point that they are not going to be in the middle of those circles. And I also kind of fussed with my title a little bit. My family was just slightly too big, and I suppose I could have recut it on my Cricut, but I didn't really want to. But it was a little bit too big just to kind of have it going straight. And so I did kind of have to go on an angle a little bit. And then, yeah, so I probably should have just recut it. Honestly, I'm just surprised that I didn't lose the little dot to the eye over the course of the week that I was working on this layout, and I had it kind of sitting on my desk, and it moved from a desk to a table and a desk to a table. I don't know how I didn't lose that tiny little eye dot. Now, I did just recently participate in Close to My Heart's May album retreat, and we got a couple of exclusive stamp sets as part of that retreat. And one of them does have this little, well, there are a couple of different stamps on there that have some music notes. And so, you know, my title, We Are Family, was going to take care of my music layer because that is a song title by, the Sledge Sisters, maybe. But now that I have this stamp set, I think I'm going to stamp a couple of music notes around my page as well. So again, I'll just kind of really make sure that I'm checking off those things that I need to do. Now here's where I come in with my second font for the title. to take care of this. I'm going to use my Pennant Banner alphabet from Close to My Heart. I really love this one. It's just a perfect little simple alphabet. Plus it has a matching thin cut, so I can use my die cut machine to cut out a bunch of different little pennant banners in different shapes, and then they fit perfectly with those letters in the alphabet. So lots of different ways that you can use this alphabet set, and I will link that below. It's one of my favorites to use. But here I'm just kind of using the letters themselves to say we are, and then like I said, I've got family, which is actually one of our favorite songs in our family. We always have to dance to that at weddings and whatnot. All right, here's where I'm coming in with those music notes, and I'm just gonna kind of go in a diagonal across the page. So I've got some up by those circles and then some by the bottom circles in the title, and that's gonna kind of draw the eye across the page in the opposite direction from what the texture paste is doing. And then I've decided just to sprinkle my stars rather than putting them on those circles like I was messing with before. And I'm pretty close to being done. That was pretty much it. Like I said, I've never done, I did put a couple of sequins on there as well. I've never done a challenge before, and this was a lot of fun. It did definitely kind of push me out of my comfort zone. I'm not sure that this layout would have come together exactly the same way if it hadn't been for this challenge. But there are a lot of different ladies who are playing along with that Craft IQ group, and so they will all be linked below, and you can kind of hop through everyone's videos and see the different ways that this layout came together. All right, guys, thank you for watching and stopping by my channel. If you liked what you see, I will leave a couple of links below, and always I would love to hear from you, so leave me a comment. All right, happy crafting!